My grandpa just passed away about 2 weeks ago. I realize that's not exactly the most cheerful way to start a post. But then again, this isn't exactly the place for cheerful stories, is it? I've never been great at dealing with tragedy, and figured it was easiest to just spit it out right away. I thought about writing some drawn-out eulogy of sorts to give everyone an idea of the person he was. Maybe tell a heartfelt story of my childhood memories of him. But there's other places for that. The only details which are really relevant here are that I didn't see much of him growing up. He was a hard worker, almost to his detriment, with little time for anything else. He outright refused to retire and worked his fields like a madman up until his death about 2 weeks ago. Even when his wife passed away several years back, he didn't seem to slow down. He was just cut from a different cloth and seemed happiest when he was working. Or maybe he just never knew how to do anything else. As you can probably tell, we weren't exactly close. No one in the family was. My mother is his daughter, and she said she can count on one hand how many times she's spoken to him in the last year. His passing was unexpected, and left my mother and my 2 uncles in a bit of an awkward spot. The 3 of them inherited his land, all 62 acres of it, as was the desire expressed in my grandfather's will. The 3 of them are also not farmers, not even close, so naturally they are looking to sell. There seems to be a few interested parties as well. But before that, my mother expressed her wishes to collect anything of sentimental value. Of course, she was far too busy to do that herself. And so, the duty fell on me and my older brother Derek. Our cousin Braden also agreed to help out, and so the 3 of us set a date in our calendar. Derek and I rented a U-Haul and loaded up to drive the 8-hour trip out to our grandfather's property. Braden was there by the time we arrived, greeting us with a smile, a few playful insults, and a 30 rack of Coors. The 3 of us stood around, slamming a few beers and catching up for a little while. It had been a while since I last seen Braden, and it was good to catch up. As we casually chatted, I first caught a glance of the rolling fields around us. Behind the house was a vast expanse of collapsed corn stalks ensnared in a row formation. Our grandpa had just finished the season's harvest a few days before he croaked, and what was left was mostly barren fields. To my left, there was a grove which comprised the southwestern corner of the property, maybe 20 acres of trees with a small pond hidden somewhere within. It was designated as a wetlands ecosystem, and so my grandpa, much to his chagrin, was never allowed to bulldoze it. Instead, it became an area which my uncles and mom loved growing up. My uncles used to tell me how they spent pretty much all of their free time out in those woods, and my mom echoed the same sentiments. The shattered remnants of a long-abandoned treehouse from their youth still clung to a trio of trees. The wood splintered and mostly rotted away. A rope ladder still dangled from its entry, swaying gently in the breeze. The 3 of us gazed upon it fondly, reminiscing on the more carefree memories of our youth. We spread out throughout the thicket, scouring the reeds and overgrown brush to try and salvage anything of potential importance. There wasn't much out there upon first glance, and soon we got lost deep within the grove. Sometime later, we reached the edge of the pond, still without finding much of familial or monetary value.
What the hell? Hey guys, come look at this.
Derek suddenly called out from further within the grove. Braden and I joined him a moment later, and found him staring down curiously at a panel on the ground. It was wooden and heavily degraded. It creaked loudly as Derek pressed his foot down on it, and the cracks within it revealed an open area beneath. Derek glanced to us with an inquisitive glance. "You guys remember this being here?" Both Braden and I shook our heads. "Nope, Guess Grandpa kept a few secrets out here after all, Braden replied. What you think's down there? I asked. Maybe a wine cellar? Or Grandpa's personal porn stash? Braden replied with a chuckle. I scoffed and tried stifling a chuckle. Yeah, thanks for that image, I replied, causing Braden to laugh even harder. Derek, on the other hand, didn't say anything. He just knelt down to the wood and tried peeking beneath it. He stayed quiet for a second, then pulled himself back up. There's something down there. He began walking away without another word. What is it? Braden asked. I don't know. It looks like a tunnel or something. Braden and I exchanged a look, and I knelt to the panel to see for myself. It was dark, and I couldn't make out much. But there was clearly a passageway of some kind. Braden knelt to get a look for himself, and Derek returned with a large pry bar. He dug it into the dirt beside the latch and began pressing the other end down. The wood splintered and gave way in a few seconds. The rusted hinges snapped right off, and the rotted wooden hull just splintered apart. Derek pushed the broken pieces out of the way, and the trap lighting pierced down into the chamber below. Well, you mangled it, I said, jeering Derek. He just shot me a scowl, then approached the now open hatch. He pulled out his phone and flicked on the flashlight as the three of us peered down. Trails of dust flickered in his faux lighting, slowly revealing the passage underneath and the rusted ladder which descended into it. It was pretty bare-boned, appearing only as a dirt tunnel with no real description beyond that. We could only see maybe 20 feet of it before it disappeared behind the curve of the ground. Obviously, Grandpa had never made any mention of its existence. At least to us. I don't think he ever told anyone about it actually. You think it'll hold? Derek asked, shining his light off the flashlight. One way to find out, Braden replied, polishing off the remainder of his beer. He then approached and reached out to the ladder, jiggling it around. Clearly, it wasn't the most robust ladder out there, but it seemed sturdy enough. Braden swiveled around, placing his foot gingerly on the first rung with a pensive expression. Dude, don't worry if you fall. I'll take care of your girlfriend. I jeered at Braden, giving him a wink. He replied only with a chuckle and erect middle finger before putting his full weight on the ladder. It jiggled, but held, so Braden took another step down. In all honesty, it was only like 15 feet down. So even if it would have broken, he probably would have been fine. Braden reached the bottom a moment later, coughing and glancing around. He turned on the flashlight on his phone and shined it further down the corridor. What do you see? Derek asked. Braden suddenly gasped and tensed up like a deer in the headlights. Oh shit. What is it? I asked. There's a car. What do you mean there's a car? Derek asked, and Braden scoffed. What do you mean, what do I mean there's a car? It's a freaking car, dude. You know, 4 tires, goes vroom vroom on roads. Derek sighed. Looks like a Chevelle or something. Braden added. Yeah. Okay, smartass. Look out. Derek then descended the ladder as well. And after he touched down, I followed behind. Once I reached the bottom, I saw it. Sure enough, there was an old car sitting derelict in the tunnel, its frame heavily rusted away, with missing tires, a cracked windshield, and rotted upholstery. It was actually a Plymouth Barracuda, contrary to what Braden had surmised. 2nd generation if I had to guess. As a car enthusiast, it hurt my heart a bit to see it in such a miserable condition. You hardly ever see Barracudas out there on the roads anymore, but those that are out there are worth a pretty penny nowadays. I would have loved to have the opportunity to work on that beauty. And yet, it was surrounded by dirt, alone and forgotten beneath Grandpa's property. It didn't make sense. I don't remember Grandpa having this, Brayden stated. Yeah, me neither. Why the hell is it down here? And how? Derek replied. I too had never known Grandpa possessed such a beautiful car, and immediately began thinking of extraction techniques. Before I could fully contemplate that, I saw something behind me. It was little more than a pile of dirt, but it appeared to be some kind of orifice in the dirt, possibly another chamber. Maybe it was like a sinkhole that dropped it down here, Brayden asked to Derek. The two of them spitballed theories as I knelt to the side behind the ladder. I brushed away some of the dirt and felt something hard on the tunnel wall behind it. I brushed more, going higher on the wall as the loose layer of dust began to fall away. It took only a second for what it was to emerge. Is that a door? Brayden took the words right out of my mouth. I backed up as the other two joined my side. Sure enough, a simple wooden door stood adjacent to us, no doubt concealing a separate passage. Derek approached it and turned the handle. I thought for sure it'd be locked or wedged shut. But to all of our surprises, it simply opened right up, revealing another passage beyond. The three of us peered inside, but all we saw was an empty dirt tunnel leading away from the entry. Of course we had to see what was down there, so the three of us followed it. The passage smelled of mildew and wet soil and winded further away in a serpentine path. There wasn't much of interest beyond the car, just old wooden support columns and trash. I was more worried of the tunnel collapsing on us at any moment than I was of actually finding anything. A few minutes later, and just as we were about to turn back, the passage suddenly opened into a substantially larger chamber. There were a lot of crates, barrels, and cardboard boxes there, with zero indication what they held. The three of us spread out and began rummaging through the stuff for anything of interest. Again, there wasn't much, at least in what I searched. Mostly just old tools, pieces of clothing, and other random items. And Grandpa was a bit of a pack rat, so it wasn't too surprising.
Hey guys?
Brayden's voice called from the other side of the room. I spun back and saw him holding out something interesting. A large saber. It looked like an old American Civil War era weapon, rusted over with faded engravings on the hilt. Brayden withdrew the blade from the hilt, and contrary to the hilt itself, the blade was in pristine condition. Dude, I think this is actual gold, Brayden said, pointing to the hilt's engravings. No way, that'd be worth thousands. No way Grandpa would just leave it to rot down here, Derek replied. Brayden shrugged. Gotta go visit Pawn Stars, I guess. I had turned from them and continued venturing into the room by that point. The more we searched, the odder the items we found were, and the harder it became to explain why Grandpa had them. A taxidermy moose head, an old-school diving suit, an ancient musket, a scepter with an odd figurine and embedded rubies, an elongated metallic skull, a massive crystal chandelier, and dozens of other odd items. Most stuff we found could have been attributed to familial heirlooms, I suppose. But it didn't stay that way.
Hey guys?
Brayden called out once again. I turned back, and to my utter bewilderment, Brayden was holding a large statue about 4 feet in height. The plastic statue was that of some red-haired, well-endowed anime girl wearing schoolgirl attire and clutching a katana. That one was not easy to explain. I guess Grandpa was a man of culture, Brayden joked, or a man of theft, Derek countered. I turned to him to find him expecting some large mechanical thing. It almost looked like a mannequin at first, but spewing from within it along with cords and unlit LEDs. It looked like a damn cyborg from iRobot or something, but all broken apart. None of us really knew what to make of those items, or really any of the things we found down there. As far as we knew, Grandpa was never exactly a robotics enthusiast, or a weep. It made me question whether he knew about that place at all. He had owned the property for nearly 6 decades, and I thought perhaps he had loaned the place out for storage. Still, nothing I theorized made a ton of sense.
Hey guys, come look at this.
Derek called from the far end of the room. Brayden and I approached him, finding him standing in front of a door. This door, like many of the other items down there, also seemed rather out of place. It was metal, like the type you'd find on an office building. There was no indication where it led. But of course, you know we had to open it. Inside, the dirt ground gave way to full concrete stairs and sheet metal walls. It was clear someone had gone to great expense to furnish that area. But who, and for what reason, we didn't know. The staircase led downward, turning left after about 10 steps. The next portion was the same, and that repeated 5 more times as the staircase spiraled down. Finally, we reached the bottom and found another door awaiting us. This one was different than the first though. The hull appeared heavily worn, like twisted and almost melted in some spots. There was a bunch of writing all over it as well, but it didn't appear to be in English. There was this odd sense that overwhelmed me then. Part overwhelming dread, and part déjà vu. I almost wanted to just turn back, but by that point, the mystery was far too powerful to ignore. Derek stepped forward and grabbed the handle, but I spoke up. Dude, wait. Derek and Brayden looked back to me with confused grimaces. I don't know if we should do this. Neither of them seemed to feel the same, judging by their expressions. Why? Brayden asked. I don't know, just something doesn't feel right about this. Do you guys feel it? Both of them glanced at each other, but neither of them seemed to feel the same. Come on, man. We gotta see what's in there. Don't you want to know too? Derek asked. Yeah, but I can't help but think Grandpa never mentioned any of this for a reason. Clearly, neither Brayden or Derek felt as apprehensive as I did, but I still couldn't shake the feeling. Derek went ahead and turned the handle. The worn door groaned and creaked, and scraped loudly against the uneven ground as he pushed it open. I don't know what I was expecting to see on the other side, but it definitely wasn't what we found. The chamber before us was much larger than I anticipated, spreading upwards for dozens of feet. The ground was metallic, some sort of rusted iron that was partially hollow in certain spots. The walls were jagged, asymmetric and multicolored, as if they had been haphazardly stuck together by multiple unaffiliated architects. Parts of them jutted out in sharp points, while others curved inward, giving the appearance of having been subjected to severe heat. There were bits of writing in random places as well, numbers, words, and fragments of thoughts. The door is open. We found it. Reality is broken, but we have the pieces, or among a few of the phrases that I spotted. It sent a few shivers down my spine, and almost appeared like the clandestine ramblings of some madman dangling on the fringes of reality. I wondered if this theorized madman could have been our grandpa. Guys, look at this, Derek called out. He was peering down one of the holes in the floor, shining his phone light down below. "Watch your step," he warned as I tiptoed over. As I grew nearer, I began to realize the floor we were standing on was not a floor at all, but more like an elevated platform, judging from the space beneath. Sure enough, as I glanced through the hole, the chamber beneath our metallic pedestal plunged downward for what seemed like hundreds of feet. A spiral staircase clung to the walls, winding its way downward, leading past countless doors of all shapes and sizes embedded in the walls along the path. I couldn't even see the bottom of it. And the longer I looked, the more I got that uncomfortable vertigo feeling, like I was glancing off the top of a cliff or a tall building. The three of us just stared down there for a few moments, all of us seeming to be mutually confounded. "You think Grandpa did all this?" Braden finally spoke up, but neither of us answered for a moment. Derek then looked at him. "How? He'd need an army to dig this out, and even then, it would have taken years, if not decades." Braden shrugged. "Well, I haven't seen him in years, so..." Braden shrugged as he spoke, but Derek didn't seem convinced. And frankly, neither was I. There was something about that place that I still can't explain the way I want to. A foreboding, unwelcome feeling. Like the things we were seeing weren't just the result of some eccentric old man with limitless resources. Derek rose up, seeming to catch sight of something. He neared the edge of the platform and moved some tarps aside, revealing a hatch. The staircase appeared to meet the platform on the other side, and Derek knelt to try and open it as Braden joined him. As he removed the rusted hinge, the deadbolt slid out, and he opened it right up. The three of us stared at it for a moment, the stairs below almost seeming to beckon to us. None of us said a word, but the next thing I know, the three of us were descending the spiral staircase. At that point, it almost felt as though I was in a trance. I was no longer just curious about this unexplained discovery. I was obsessed, and I had to know the truth. A few moments later, and we arrived at the first door on the path. Braden tried opening it, only to find there was no handle on the door. He pushed against it, but it didn't budge at all. The three of us exchanged perturbed glances. Derek peered over the railing for a moment, as I began second-guessing what we were doing. "I don't think it's gonna open," Braden finally said. "Then, why is it here? Why is any of this down here?" Derek asked, more wondering aloud than expecting an actual answer. He continued staring downward, and Braden and I exchanged a glance. Derek then abruptly began walking further downward, and within moments, he reached the next door only a few steps further down. That one had a handle, but trying to open it proved just as futile as the first. Derek went on to the next, but got the same result and started towards the fourth. Suddenly, Derek slipped, seeming to lose his footing on the rung. Luckily, he managed to grab a hold of the railing as the step beneath him gave way, plummeting downward. Braden and I rushed to grab him as the broken step clanked loudly on its way down. It must have bounced off walls and other parts of stairs close to a dozen times before it finally stopped as it appeared to strike the bottom. But by that point, it had long since vanished into darkness. Derek stood back up, and the three of us backed away as the echoes of metallic clanging slowly dwindled down. As my eyes glanced upward, something caught my attention on the underside of the platform. A distinctive set of lines and symbols, reminiscent of a clock face. But the symbols were ones I've never seen before and didn't recognize. Then, from far below us, something clanged against metal once more. The three of us paused and averted our attention downward as another clang rang out. Even with our flashlights, we could barely see down in the canopy of darkness. The faint light was barely enough to illuminate something below. The vague form of something came into view, and my heart began to race. "Someone's down there," Braden spoke, to all of our utter disbelief. The sheer impossibility of the situation struck my mind, but I couldn't deny the person far below us beginning to trudge up the stairs. It walked like a person would, but its form was hidden, obscured in shadow and shroud. Something was very wrong about it.
"Hey, who's down there?"
Braden called out. The thing below suddenly froze. The tension in that bizarre place became thick as syrup as we waited to see what it was doing. Slowly, its head tilted upward, until stopping as it aimed directly at us. Its form was covered by some sort of tarp or shroud, and its face remained unseen. I felt a sense of dread mount in my gut like bricks. "We should go." As soon as the words left Derek's mouth, a loud bang echoed from below us. The three of us adjusted our gaze, seeing one of the other doors below us beginning to tremble as the clangs reverberated again and again. Even further below, and even more worrying, the shrouded thing had now begun running up the spiral staircase.
"What the hell is that?"
Braden asked as the other door crumbled. Something then shrieked from behind it, reaching out with a long clawed hand. The door continued to give way as the shrouded entity grew nearer, and the three of us ran like hell. We quickly scaled the ladder and slammed the latch behind us. As we reached the door we had entered from, an absolute calamity had emerged behind us. It sounded like the entire place was on the verge of collapsing, with other doors sounding like they were being forced open. Suddenly, a siren began blaring all around us, so loud I had to clasp my ears to avoid going deaf. The three of us scrambled onward, back up the metal stairs and into the treasure room from earlier. Braden yelled something from up ahead, but with the absolute racket of the siren, I couldn't make it out. We just kept moving onward and back into the treasure room. We were nearing the tunnel that led us in, when something stopped us, dead in our tracks. We all seemed to see it at the same time. There was someone up ahead, blocking our path. The person trudged towards us, clutching a rifle with a duffel bag draped over their shoulder. It then lifted a hand, and the deafening siren fell silent.
"Who's there?"
Derek called out, but the person didn't respond. He then came into view of our light, and thankfully proved to just be a man with a thick black beard. But he wasn't someone I recognized.
"Who the hell are you?"
Braden asked. The man's dark eyes scanned each of us as he clutched his AR-15 tightly. An immense sound then thundered behind us, sounding eerily like that of an incensed roar from some colossal beast. The black-haired man's eyes went wide. "You broke the seal," he all but whispered the words as the calamity grew behind us.
"Idiots! Get out of here! If I don't come back, torch this place!"
He trudged past us without another word, aiming his rifle down the corridor we had just come from. The three of us just ran, and the sounds of gunfire serenaded our escape. We were back at the entry ladder only a minute or two later, and without hesitation, back on the surface.
"What the hell was that? What's going on?"
Braden asked between labored breaths, but neither I or Derek had an answer. Things had suddenly fallen eerily quiet. We waited there for maybe 20 minutes for that guy to return, but he never did. Brayden wanted to take his advice and destroy that place. But I didn't even know how we'd do that, even if we wanted to. It's not like any of us had dynamite on hand. Grandpa's house seemed in a state of disarray in the distance, like more so than it had when we had arrived. I assumed that those things below us had something to do with it, but even with that explanation had problems. In the end, we just gathered our stuff and got the hell out of there. That decision has since proved to be the worst and the best option. Derek and I rode in silence for a long time on the drive home. But eventually, I dialed my mother, figuring I needed to inform her of what had happened, and we conversed nonchalantly for a minute or two as she told me about her spending the weekend out of town at a retreat with some of her friends. Her mother's intuition eventually kicked in, and she asked me if I was okay and what I was doing. Well, Mom, we're still out at Grandpa's property and I trailed off, glancing to Derek for clues.
Your grandpa? Grandpa Hayes?
Her response kind of annoyed me. No, your father's mom. Remember? We're out at his property, and something happened. She remained silent on the other end for what felt like minutes.
Why are you... how did you find it?
My annoyance grew with that. Mom, you told us to go out there after we passed, remember? Mom stammered on the other end of the line, clearly caught completely off guard somehow, like the two of us were speaking different languages.
Son, where are you? Are you safe? You're kind of scaring me. Can you come home?
Yes, Mom. We're all fine. We're on our way home now. Do you not remember what happened with Grandpa?
Honey, I don't know where this is suddenly coming from, or how to tell you this. But your grandpa's been dead for almost 20 years.
My heart just basically sunk into my stomach, and I didn't even know how to process those words.
There was an accident back at his farm. He got injured somehow, and they found him in his kitchen. The property was sold not long after, sweetheart. I'm sorry, I thought you knew.
I just remained silent for a moment, as Derek asked me what was going on. I'll call you back. Derek asked me what was wrong, but I didn't even know what to tell him. Nothing about what I just heard made sense. I told him what Mom had told me, and the two of us just bemused our confounded mutual malaise the rest of the ride home. Over the next few days, he and I, along with Brayden, attempted to figure out what the hell had just happened. After meeting with my mom, she confirmed that our grandfather had passed away in mid-2002. She even showed us the death certificate and the coroner's report, which listed his cause of death as blood loss via wound inflicted by unknown object. That alone was shocking enough. But when Mom pulled out an old photo of him, I nearly shat myself. His thick black hair and beard was oddly more familiar than it should have been. He was undeniably the man we'd seen the day we went into the tunnels. Brayden raised the idea that this was the Mandela effect, or that we had slipped into an alternate dimension. The three of us have been scouring the internet to see whether we can confirm that. But as of yet, we haven't found anything out of the ordinary or different than we remember. Derek has said we should go back to that property, but I'm not so sure that's a good idea. Not only because the land has now been sold to someone, but also just because of everything that's happened. Grandpa's cryptic words just keep echoing in my mind, along with the words scrawled on the walls there. I think that place, whatever it was a sort of bridge, either between different places or times, or both. I think Maybe all those different items in that treasure room were taken from various points in time. Maybe those doors were some kind of portals, and Grandpa used them to collect or steal things. Maybe those things we saw came through after we broke the seal, as he had said. I just hope, whatever those things were, that Grandpa was able to seal them back down there. Because if not, then there's no telling where they could be now.